Well, hello and welcome back to In the Growth Space. I'm David McGlennon, and I'm really grateful to have you listening in, my friend. You know, I get the honor and the privilege of talking with a lot of great leaders here on the podcast, and they all have unique perspectives on, you know, how to grow themselves and how to grow their teams and grow their companies. So I wanted to be able to have a way to share those stories and those conversations with others. And so really that's what this podcast is all about. I believe that we can learn so much from others when we're curious and we get to ask a lot of questions and hear others' stories of growth. And today's no different. So today's guest is a really smart and intentional leader. And I love the lessons that she shares as a CEO and as a leader with a growth mindset. So I'm talking today to Jacquelyn Jordon Core, and she has such a great growth mindset and a unique view of how to build an engaging workplace. She has 2 doctorate degrees, which is amazing in and of itself. And she's a lawyer that specializes in the mergers and acquisition space. And really, she's a great example of a leader who's finding ways to adapt to the new world of work. And this conversation is such a great reminder of how to build an intentional organization, an intentional organizational culture, and really being an intentional leader. It's also a great reminder about being intentional with our growth. So there's a lot of intentionality in this particular episode. So a lot of great reminders as we go through this conversation, how to keep yourself growing. And I know that you're going to love this conversation. So let's go ahead and get into the conversation with Jacquelyn Jordon Core. Well, welcome, Jacquelyn. It's so great to have you here on In the Growth Space. Glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited because you and I have, gotten to know each other, not too long ago, fairly recently. And I just kind of love the story of your growth and the growth, of your firm. And so I'd love to just kind of think back and just get a little insight on what got you interested in law. I mean, you've got multiple doctorate degrees. So, I mean, you loved school, obviously, but what got you into law?
That's true. I'm definitely a lifelong learner and have been accused of being overeducated. But I had a really inauspicious start in law. I was not like the kid who grew up my whole life thinking I wanted to be a lawyer. I think more than anything, I was a product of poor high school guidance counseling.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was, of course, a different time when we were in school. And I think I knew of like a sum total of 5 things I could be, right? My mom was a teacher, so I knew you could be a teacher.
Yeah.
And I knew you could be a nurse somehow.
Sure.
I don't know how I knew that. I knew you could be a nurse. And my parents had an accountant. So I think I knew you could be an accountant.
You do that.
And then it seemed like, the smart kids were supposed to go be doctors or lawyers. Right.
Gotcha.
So very different time, not a big focus on, what do you love? How could you change the world? What impact could you make? Just very, very few paths. And so I went to high school not knowing what I wanted to do. I left high school a year early and went to college, not really knowing what I wanted to do, but thinking that I would be a doctor.
Oh, okay.
A doctor.
Yeah.
And my brain does not work that way, right? Math and science up here, it's a scary thing.
Oh no.
Business math, I got really good at, when I was a CEO, but it's just it's not the natural way my brain processes things. I'm really a social scientist. And so I started undergraduate with all these science classes, and not long into it, I thought, what am I doing? Like, this is not the way my brain works. I don't love this.
Yeah.
And but I had a great American government teacher in high school, a woman named Carol Henry. And She loved American government. Her class was hard. Lots of people didn't like it. It was hard,
Sure, sure.
but she's super inspiring. I've often thought I should like call her and thank her
Yeah.
because she's the real reason, right? When I didn't know
Very
what else
cool.
to do and I needed to change, I thought, well, I'll go be a lawyer, right? I'll
Yeah.
make that what I do.
Right, right.
So yeah.
Isn't it interesting how one teacher can really like turn you on to something and really kind of like unlock the, the desire within you and the curiosity within you. I think a lot of times teachers don't realize they have such a huge impact on young people.
Oh no, it's so true. And when I think about that, I think that I really was in a situation where I was fortunate to have a couple of really great teachers. In high school, I had a great English teacher, a guy named Dr. Jeffrey Martin. He's amazing. And
Cool.
and this great American government teacher. I mean, not that the rest of my teachers weren't great too, but
Sure.
those two like really stand out as people who really challenged me and made me think. And that's what made me love learning so much, right? Those classes. And so I often think that I owe my success to her because she was the one. She was so excited about American government that she made it fascinating.
Very cool. Wow.
Yeah.
So you got interested in law. You went through the training. You got into law. How did you how did you get to where you are today? You have your own firm, and you're doing some things that are new and different, at least from my perception. With law firms. I mean, your firm is all virtual, and so that's probably something that's fairly new, given, the pandemic and all of that kind of thing, but you guys make it work really, really well. And so what kind of got you into thinking about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that how we survive or how we do well virtually was almost in some ways an afterthought.
Okay.
We had Michael and I, my partner, we had both worked in really big firms. I was at Steptoe Johnson. He started at Lord Day and Lord in Midtown Manhattan.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we both had big firm experience, and a lot of our lawyers have had big firm experience. And, we didn't love the culture of big firms.
Yeah.
Steptoe was great. I made a ton of amazing friends there. So many really wonderful lawyers and good mentors there.
Yeah.
But it always seemed, so big that it was impersonal. And Michael and I met at a mid-sized firm, and we kept talking sort of iteratively about how would this look if it was ideal, right? If people woke up in the morning and they really wanted to come to work with us and they really wanted to be part of something. And we joked like, we're not creating a law firm, we're trying to create a movement, right?
Right.
But over the years, we had heard so many people complain about how terrible big law was and how terrible working at firms were and how they hated their jobs. And we just said, it seems so simple. It really shouldn't have to be this way. And so really what we started doing was just asking questions of ourselves at first, but also of other people, like, what would it look like if it was great? Right? What would it look like if it was great? And people said really simple things like, well, I would feel appreciated. Or the things that were said to me would be true. Right. So if people said they were family friendly, they would really be family friendly. It wouldn't be, well, sure, you could go to your son's baseball game, but you knew that there'd be something held against you, or you knew there'd be a consequence of that later, that there really would be no consequence, that if people said you can go to the baseball game, they really meant you can go to the baseball game. And that kind of led us to talking about, do we really need lawyers to work 9 to 5? Right.
Right.
And one of the things when I left corporate America and being a CEO to come back into private practice, which was always my intention. I love practicing. I had left private practice and went in-house because I was raising two boys, and it
Sure.
was, they were my first priority. And so it was better for them, for me to not be at a big firm. And I had a litigation practice at the time, and that wasn't family friendly. It was not
Sure. Yeah.
conducive to raising two kids.
Sure.
So, but I always loved it, and I always wanted to come back. And so one of the things that happened to me is when they went off to college, I wanted to be able to see them run. They're Division I distance runners, as you know, and I wanted to watch them run, and I still wanted to be an important part of their lives. And that meant that I needed flexibility. And when I started looking for a job, what I found was a lot of big firms were not willing to be flexible. They said things like, you can use your vacation time however you want.
Right.
and I thought, well, that doesn't seem like that flexible of an answer.
Right.
Yeah. And so, we started talking about, well, what difference does it make if you worked the weekend so that you could take a few days off because that worked better for your schedule? Or you worked in the evening because you needed to be somewhere during the day. You needed to be at the school during the day with your child, right?
Right.
Why would that matter? So long as the clients got good client service and we were very responsive. And so we started with like, what would we want our client service standards to be? And so things like, we want emails to be answered within 24 hours, same day if possible. At least acknowledge you've gotten something, provide a timeline of when you're going to get it done, stay in communication. And that's really the most frequent complaint we hear when people come to us and they've been with other lawyers. It's, I can't get my lawyer to call me back, right? It's such a basic thing. We started with, what do we want our standards to be? And then how can we be flexible within those standards? Because we didn't want to create a situation where the client service was impaired in any way. But really, our clients, I don't think they care if people are doing something at 5 o'clock in the morning because they're a morning person and they can do that before they get their kids up to go to school. It doesn't matter, right? They wake up and they look at their email and they say, look, things happened while I was asleep.
I slept.
Law miracle.
Yes, right.
So that was really what it was about. It was about kind of defining what this team would look like. And then we started pulling people together, and people started saying, oh, I really love this. This is amazing. And so that, as you know, that's kind of what led us to you, right? Is how do we have this culture that we like, and people are happy and people feel appreciated, and how do we preserve it? How do we keep client service standards? How do we do good work? But still keep it the kind of place where people wake up wanting to go to work in the morning.
Yeah, gosh, that's so great. And the thing that I hear in all of that is really an intentionality. You're very, very intentional with asking good questions and actually being intentional of creating the culture that you wanted to have. And I think that for many leaders, they don't realize that they can lead the culture. They can create a culture where people do want to come to work and they want to be able to be valued and appreciated.
Yeah. And, it's meant some hard decisions.
Sure.
When we have been looking for team members, at one point we made a decision to pass on a Harvard educated guy who just had an amazing credentials, great experience. He had been general counsel for a Fortune 500 company. And we met with him a couple of times and we thought, he's just not the right fit for the team. Right. So there have been, like, that was one of the hardest decisions we ever made, is to take this guy who we knew, based on his background and our discussions with him, was a brilliant lawyer. But who we thought wasn't going to fit the culture of the team.
Yeah, that's so important, because once you have the intentionality of having a culture and intentionally creating the behaviors, the fundamentals of the organization, you can then more easily decide who's a fit and who's not a fit, and I know that it's not a perfect science, but it does give you a heck of a lot better chance to bring the right person in if you have those things defined.
Yeah. And I think it's let us be transparent with our clients about who we are,
Yes, of course.
and how we're going to interact, how we intend to treat them, how we expect them to treat us and treat our people. And
Mm-hmm.
so, we've drawn some real lines that I think are good lines there.
Yeah.
And I think that that level of transparency and that ability to articulate, what you called an intentionality, like what are we really looking to achieve here, and what's our goal, and how are we going to operate? The ability to articulate that has been amazing because people know what they're getting in advance and people know what to
Yeah.
expect. And
Right.
I think kind of having the expectations, has been really wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I guess what are some of the things that as you've grown your firm, what are some of the things that you've learned along the way in that growth path? Because I mean, the one thing I do know is that yes, you're growing really, really well, but you're not growing just to grow. I mean, you're growing very intentionally along the way, and so I'm kind of curious, like what led to that, and like what have you learned along the way?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing Michael and I both would say we learned is how to meet people where they are.
Yeah,
We said we're going to meet people where they are.
yeah,
So this has not been a 100% entirely smooth path, right? I mean, we've
sure,
made mistakes and we are learning as we go, which is part of the beautiful part of it too, right?
absolutely,
But
absolutely.
I think, we had said we really want to meet people where they are.
Mhm.
And then like in the next breath, Michael and I were saying to each other, you know, why aren't some of these people so excited about this like we are? And it's like, well, wait a minute. Eventually we said,
Yeah,
wait a minute, that's not where they are, right? It's,
sure.
they want to use their brain, they want to do good legal work, they want to be involved, but it's not their end all be all, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I think we had to look back and ask ourselves, what's it really mean to meet somebody where they are? And
yeah.
are we going to do that or not?
Right,
Right.
right.
Because there is a point where we said, like, we don't think we're meeting this person, where she is. She was being
Hmm.
transparent and honest with us, but
Yeah,
we were expecting her to be more excited or more, you know, all in sort of about it. And
yeah,
that's not what
sure.
she is, but she's an amazing, she makes amazing contributions to the team.
Yeah.
So, learning those kind of things, like what's it really mean? Okay, you
Mm.
say, and I think that is part of the problem that happens, right? That's what got us where we are, is that people do want to do the right things. People want
Right.
to, people want to be family friendly.
Hmm.
People want to honor diversity and inclusion
Yeah.
conceptually,
Right.
right? But you get so busy that you have to realize that to do those things, you have to devote time and energy, and you have to mean it, and
Mm.
you have to talk about it, and you have to
Yeah.
re-examine it. And you really have to think hard about what it means to make those promises to people. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's what I think, Michael has been amazing as a partner in doing that. We spend a lot of time just like talking about how we make these things work, how we make this better for our people. We spend a lot of time asking them,
Hmm.
what do you need? Are you okay? Do you have enough resources? How's the workload? How's the
Right.
work? Is it the kind of work you want? Is it working out okay? Are we supporting you? Do
Yeah.
you have ways we can make it even better? And that communication about those things, not just saying, oh, we're going to be family friendly,
Yeah.
right? But talking about what would it look like for you, as someone who's working with us, for us to be family friendly, right?
Hmm.
What would it look like for you, for us to really honor diversity and inclusion,
Yeah. Right.
right?
Right.
And so not just saying we're going to do it, but
Yeah.
actually exploring it and kind of deep
Hmm.
diving. And maybe some of that's my academic background, right? Like,
Sure. Sure.
my PhD's in human geography. But
I love
kind of deep diving into those things has made so much difference, because we're able to engage those people as part of the team that's steering the ship.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I mean, I think that makes your organization a heck of a lot more valuable because you're using the strengths of everyone, and you're finding out what makes it great for them. And that takes a lot of, again, I'm going to go back to that word intentionality, but it also takes a lot of leadership. It takes a lot of leadership to know that, hey, we need to downshift here for a second. We need to talk about these things. And I know that in the world of law, I mean, time is money. I mean, and so to slow down and do those things means that, hey, this is taking a higher priority than money. This is taking a higher priority than billing our clients. But because I'm doing this and because I'm slowing down, it's going to mean that we're more effective and we're serving our clients in a deeper way. I don't know if that's an accurate statement, but that's kind of what I see from my perspective.
It's definitely accurate, right? I mean, first of all, we said when we started this firm, Michael and I said, we will not be driven by greed.
Yeah. Yeah.
We actually lowered Michael's hourly rate $50 an hour when we left.
Wow.
We said we're remote. We have less overhead. We don't need to charge as much, right? We can pass this savings, onto our clients and make people able to get sophisticated services at a reasonable price.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, it does take time. I mean, yesterday we have an amazing paralegal who puts together our social media posts for us and sends them to us. Cool. And so, yesterday she sent us posts and she said, it's almost February. February's Black History Month. Like, here's some posts. And then Michael and I kind of went down a rabbit hole for like an hour and a half, reading articles online. Like, how do you really honor Black History Month in the workplace? And what's that mean? And, it kind of changed the whole tenor of what our attorney meeting is going to be this morning, which is, and we said, like, could we ask people to spend some time volunteering with a social justice organization but we want to engage our people. Like, what would it mean for us to not just put a post out there on LinkedIn that says, hey, it's Black History Month, we recognize it, right? But what would it mean to do something meaningful as a firm?
Right.
So we spent a lot of time talking about that, but we almost feel like all that time comes back to us because when our people are happy, when our people know that we really value these things and we mean it, and it's not lip service, that we're trying to be intentional about it, it creates loyalty in them, and it makes them such great workers, and it makes them care about their work and the quality of the work. And it makes them care about the clients. And so, I think it all pays off. It's one of those things where, you could say if we weren't spending this time, talking about this, we could be billing and we could be making money. Right. Yeah, but in the end, we'll make money because we're doing the right things. Right.
Yeah. Right.
We really believe that. And so it's been a journey. It's been an incredible blessing to have these amazing people working with us, and the time we spend trying to support them or trying to be intentional about these things that we know are important to them. It's all time well spent, and it makes a team better.
Yeah, for sure. I really love that because I think that it makes a workplace a lot more fun to be in and meaningful too. Because if you're doing things that are meaningful, like honoring Black History Month, like, being intentional with your culture, with, understanding your people. I mean, that really makes a huge difference on how people like feel on a Sunday night. It's not like the Sunday night dreads, like, oh my gosh, I got to get up and go to work in the morning. They're excited and they want to do the work, and it's fulfilling. So I just think, what you're doing is so amazing. And I wanted to be able to share with the audience just all about, what your firm is doing and how you're growing and how you're being intentional with building it. Because to me, I think it's the company of the future, and it's the company of the now too. But I think there's a lot of leaders right now who have been stuck in the old way of doing work and doing business, when we recognize that I think it can be a heck of a lot more fun. And I think you can do a lot better work when you have people that really want to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we try to look at it like an opportunity that's been entrusted to us, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Rather than, rather than a business.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
these are people's lives, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
even our clients, like, these are their businesses. It's important. What we're doing is important. So how do we treat it in an important way, and how do we honor it?
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of curious. So, and that just triggered a thought for me, because I know that you do a lot of work in the mergers and acquisitions world, and I'm kind of curious. What do you see when it comes to companies that have grown and owners or business owners that are planning for succession? How do they, like, the stuff that we're talking about here, how does that impact an organization? I mean, do you see other companies that have actually intentionally grown their company through culture and their people? Or I guess I'm not sure what I'm asking here, but you have exposure to a lot of different organizations. And so I'm kind of curious if you're seeing, a trend in the culture of organizations.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think we definitely see often new owners coming in and uh, immediately sort of moving to more progressive positions. So we
Sure.
often will see that, but we're really with some amazing clients that are doing some amazing things with their people. And
Hmm.
so that's kind of a great model for us as well. So
Yeah.
because we do some labor and employment work and we're working through transitions, seeing how people take care of their people during that
Yeah.
is always, it's instructive, right? If you pay attention, you can always learn. There's always something to
Yeah.
learn.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, and I guess if you, since you've seen a lot of that, is there something that if you were speaking to a room full of business owners that you could say, hey, make sure that when you're thinking about planning for this eventuality, whether you sell it to your kids or whether you sell it to somebody else, or you're thinking about that succession, that you don't want to forget to do this. Is there something that like is kind of a general message that you have for?
I mean, I think a couple things. One, you have to start early.
Yeah, sure.
You have to start early. So
Yeah,
a lot of people run their business, as they ran their business for many, many years without a lot of attention to, what do our contracts look like or what's our corporate structure look like?
yeah,
And they don't realize that all those things are going to be put under a microscope by a buyer.
sure.
Um, so we do a lot of reverse diligence,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
is what we call it.
yeah,
So in a deal, the other side comes in, they do diligence, they look at
yeah.
your employment and your insurance and your contracts and your people. And
Hmm.
so we'll often go in to people who know that they're going to sell and say, let us look at all these things. And if you have things that need to be fixed, let's fix them
Sure.
before you take the business to market. So that
Mm,
a buyer coming in has a clean company to buy. So you don't have
yeah.
corporate issues. So you don't,
Right.
and there are all kinds of things, mostly unintentional. We
Right.
had a
Right.
client recently who on paper didn't own all of the business,
Oh gosh.
right? Had gone through a divorce
Ah,
and her former spouse had never signed appropriate paperwork to transfer the ownership of the company over to her. Now we were
oops.
able to get that done without any problem. He was very
Sure.
cooperative, but you can't sell a company you don't own.
Right. You got to look at that stuff, right?
Like she thought it was done. She thought everything she needed to do had been
Mm,
wrapped up. And
yeah.
why wouldn't she think that, right? She had
Right.
somebody
Right.
helping her through that process, but they didn't kind of put the last bow on it, right?
Mm,
And
yeah.
so finding those things early where you can fix it, and even if it's fixed not long before the company goes to sale, it's still fixed. Fixed is
Right.
fixed, right?
Right.
But there's no opportunity then for it to raise a red flag.
Sure.
And so
Yeah.
often there are ownership issues. We have another client right now who uh, had bought a partner out and did all the paperwork he was supposed to do to buy the partner out. but the
Yeah.
partner's name's still on the operating agreement. So the operating agreement
Okay.
had never been amended and restated. So we
Okay.
had to amend it and restated operating agreement, get that former partner's name off the governing documents for the
Sure.
organization. So he didn't have ownership, but his
Okay.
name was still on the governing documents, right? And so
Yeah.
those none of those things are things that can't be overcome. But when they're found in the process of a sale, they're one red flag.
Red flags. Yeah,
Like,
sure.
oh, okay, this is maybe just it's seen as, even if it's not sloppy, it might be seen as sloppy or seen as inattentive,
Yeah.
right? Really, these business owners, they've been doing the good work and running the business, right? It's not what they look at every day. But when we're able to kind of clean that up for them, then you're eliminating red flags. And those red flags are the flags that get used to decrease your multiple or to decrease
Right.
your price, right?
Yes,
And
right.
people get nervous and they say, we need really strong reps and warranties against you because we've seen these problems. And so let's not have people need to take that position because they feel the need to protect themselves in the transaction, because you had some things that we could have cleaned up in advance. And so that's my biggest thing is start early, take the time to have somebody look at it. Mergers and acquisitions is pretty specialized. And so, you might have an amazing day-to-day contracts or corporate lawyer that doesn't have any M&A experience, and they can't help you get ready.
Yeah, right.
And so taking that time, and it's not really additional cost, because you're either going to spend it getting your ducks in a row now, then when diligence happens, you're just going to say, here's everything, right? Or you're going to spend it in diligence. So, it's pay me now, pay me later kind of thing. It doesn't increase cost, but those red flags just go down. You can just knock them down, because we know it's the same thing that's asked for in every transaction of a certain size and a certain character for the most part. We know what those things are, right? Michael and I have got 50, plus combined years legal experience, and we've got, people who've been doing diligence on deal after deal after deal. So we can tell people this is what they're going to look at.
Yeah. Well, and when somebody's thinking ahead and thinking about, that planning, how soon should they start some of this process? I mean, let's say, for example, you've got a business owner in their, early to mid 50s, and they're thinking, maybe they're not even thinking about that transition right now, but should they be? And if so, I mean, what are some things that they need to begin to think about then, like what's first on their to-do list?
Yeah. I mean, so I think that everybody says 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Like 5 years is still a lot of years out. If you fix everything now, and then you're not going to sell for 5 more years, it can be a mess again in 5 years if you don't really tend to the house, right? So 5 years for that kind of preparation tends to be a lot. But I think it is helpful to think about what the time horizon is in 2 perspectives, because there's really 2 kinds of readiness, right? There's business readiness, but then there's also your individual sort of human readiness for this process.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you think about it a few years in advance, then I think it also makes you think about, we almost always ask clients very early on in our engagement with them, what are you going to do once we close the deal? If we're on the sell side, right?
Yeah.
What are your plans? And some people have a very clear answer. They're like, oh, we have grandkids and they're in South Carolina and we're going to spend a ton of time in South Carolina, or we love to travel and we have this list of trips that we want to take, or, people will have some hobby, like I'm going to clear all the flat spaces in my house and I'm building model boats, it doesn't matter what it is. Right. So, but a lot of people have plans, they've thought it out. And then some people will say, I don't have any idea what I'm going to do when we close. And so while it's not our job as lawyers, we'll say to people, well, think about that, make some plans, right? Write down, start journaling, right? Write down what you're going to do, what your plan is, what you want to accomplish when this phase of your life is over and you're on to a new phase, make that exciting. But that kind of personal readiness is really important. And that, I think, creeps up on people who either get a great offer out of the blue, right? We say there's kind of, there's a number of different answers when you ask people, are you going to sell your business, right? Some
For
people are
sure.
like, yes, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Some people say in 3 to 5 years.
Mm.
Some people say, well, everybody has a price, right?
Yeah,
And then some
sure.
people say, no, never, never, ever.
Yeah.
No, never, ever people are really rare. But these people down here in this quadrant who are everybody has a price, or if the right deal came along, if the right deal comes along now, sometimes they get caught unaware.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, I mean, again, these aren't legal concepts, right? And we're certainly not counselors or therapists or executive coaches or anything like, right? But sometimes somebody like that, getting an executive coach to walk you through this, or, but being, to go back to that word, intentional about what the transition looks like. I think when people start earlier, that's another advantage of that, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So
Sure.
I would say that's another thing, that we just like people to leave the transactions excited and happy about the next phase of their life.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
so that's another thing that I think, as much as get the corporate house in order.
Yeah.
And look at those things that are going to be asked for in diligence. I think there's also, get your mental house in order.
I think there's so much to be said about that human psychology. I had somebody on the podcast, I think it was maybe even last summer sometime. And she talked about she sold a business, and she actually kind of focused on the human psychology part of the, like, hey, well, what's next? I see all these trucks, pulling my files away, and now this isn't my company anymore. Now what? And all of those human dynamics of that is, it's something I think that I'm sure a lot of business owners don't think through. And so, I think the being intentional is really, really important. Let me just shift gears. And I know I'm going to be real mindful of our time here, but so we've talked about, business growth and culture. And I'm kind of curious, how do you keep yourself growing? How do you keep yourself, just challenged, growing, and learning? I mean, obviously you said you're a lifelong learner. I know that. But like, what's your Methodology? How do you keep growing?
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, I'm in Vistage.
Yep.
And I think Vistage is awesome because it's a great sounding board, right? They sometimes call what happens in Vistage carefrontational, right?
Yes.
So it's a good kind of check on what you're doing. So Vistage is very helpful to me in that regard. I've got an amazing executive coach now that Regina Bryan, who's fantastic. Can't say enough great things about her. And so I think that's great to have somebody to talk through what's going on and help you process it. I'm just a voracious reader, right? I read 76 books last year.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
I've read 9 books in the month of January.
Oh my gosh.
And so I read a lot.
If
I'm doing laundry, I have an audiobook in. If I'm walking books, I have an audiobook in. And it's not all, they're not all business books. Some of them are, geography books. Some of them are just fiction. Sometimes I say I love fiction because I've got a lot of real things in my life. Like I could use some things that aren't real.
Yes, right.
But I think that reading for me is, so if I'm in the car, I listen to a lot of books on tape. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and so, listening to stuff like your podcast and picking up like from other business leaders, what are they doing? How are they growing? I think that's how, you model yourself out after successful people, that you love what they're doing and you appreciate them. And that's what I think. It's just exposure. It's a constant exposure to new ideas, to new methods, to new ways of thinking about things. And those are some of the ways that I, bring all that stuff in and get those.
Oh gosh, I love that. I can't imagine 76 books. I thought I read a lot, and I think I had like 25 books last year. So you killed me. I mean, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy. My mom is my mom and dad are always like, oh, you got to get your head out of a book. But I mean, I do a lot, I'm hiking the Appalachian Trail, like I fly fish, so I do a lot of outdoor stuff. I have a lot of other things. So it's not like I'm not like just a bookworm, right? But I do love to read. And I think audiobooks that's really revolutionized like how much, and I maybe some people would say, I would say half those are audio and half those are real books, right?
Books, yeah,
maybe
sure.
people would say, well, you can't count those audio books as reading, right?
Oh,
But
I disagree.
but it's consuming content, right?
Absolutely.
And that's however works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree, because I think that being able to be exposed to other thinking and other, the authors have had other experience. What better way to be mentored than through a book? I mean, it's just a great way to grow. So I love that. Well, Jacquelyn, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. I really appreciate it. I loved the conversation, and I love being able to get to, know you and your firm, and really being able to interact. And so if there's anything that you want to leave the audience with, to just kind of call this conversation complete, what would that be? And then where do people come and find out more about your organization?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it is keep it about the people, right?
Yeah.
Keep it about the people, not about the money. The money will follow. The money will come if you do the right thing, right? And so the whole reason I think we've been blessed is that we've kept people.
Yeah.
And then how to get in contact with me. LinkedIn is great. I'm Jacquelyn Jordon Core on LinkedIn, or our contact information is on our firm website, which is www.jordonvoytek.com. So it's Jordon. I'm an O-N Jordan, not an A-N Jordan. JordonVoytek.com. So happy to connect with anyone.
Love that. Well, we will make sure that all of that is in the show notes as well. My podcast team will put that in the show notes, so that people, if they're walking or they're hiking or they're working out or whatever, they're driving, they can go to the show notes later and click on that and be able to connect with you. So Jacquelyn, thank you.
Opportunity. Appreciate it.
It's great to have you here, and great to be able to have this conversation. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
That was such a great conversation. I love that last line, keep it about the people, the money will come. I mean, I think that really sums up the conversation really, really well. But there were a couple of points that I just wanted to kind of bring to your attention, because I think it's really important to take a look at kind of our history and see the value that the teachers in our lives have. And for those of you who are teachers, you never know the influence that you're going to have on people's lives, on kids' lives. And so that value of a teacher to influence and really unlock the curiosity within the students is immense. And so you can see what one teacher did for this individual, this leader, to be able to impact so many other people. So I think that's really important for us to remember, that even as leaders, we are a teacher. We are teachers as leaders. And so if we're going to have an intentional culture, if we're going to have an intentional growth of our team, we're going to be a teacher. And so that influence is really important. And so we can really unlock the curiosity and the potential within the people that we lead if we are aware of it. And really the key to growth is a mindset and a love of learning. I think that Jacquelyn really talked a lot about that, and how she had that unsatiable or insatiable love of learning. And I think that that's a really important for us to remember as leaders. And the other thing that she said was, I really love this around culture. Really, it's all about a culture of connecting and being able to create a really engaging workplace by connecting with the people in our organization and making those human connections and really understanding what motivates them, what helps them, and really being able to adapt to their needs and their wants and their desires. And I know that is really hard for a lot of people who were programmed in a different era. But I'm telling you right now, that's going to be the challenge, and that's going to be the challenge of working in this workplace going forward. But really, once you have a connection with our people or with your people, and develop an engaging workplace, you're going to really see that it makes it a lot easier to hire for the right fit for the team, and being able to have people that are attracted to your desired culture. And that really just means, and that's what Jacquelyn said, is meeting people where they are. And I think that part of the challenge in building an organization that is diverse and that is kind of like a family, it takes a lot of intentionality. It takes a lot of teaching, and it takes a lot of time, and it can often feel like it slows you down. But really, in the end, it makes all the difference in the world. And so, by doing these things, by engaging your people, by getting to know them, by understanding their motivation, by teaching them the benefits of your behaviors and your fundamentals of your culture, it's going to make the team better, and it's going to make your work and your workplace so much more meaningful. And when you do that, you're going to have a lot of engaged employees who really will fight and protect your company culture. So I hope that this conversation was really helpful for you, especially if you're a leader who is looking to be intentional around your culture and around your people engagement. I know it's a big topic, and we're going to have others come on and share their perspective on how to become an employer of choice and really get your people to really be engaged. And so keep listening to In the Growth Space, and make sure that you subscribe, because when you subscribe, the episodes get automatically downloaded, and you'll have access right away to these conversations. Thank you so much for listening. I want to just say thank you to all of our listeners, because it's really meaningful when I hear back about how an episode has impacted you. And I would just encourage you that if any of our episodes have encouraged you, please send us a note. Send me and my team a note, david@davidmcglennon.com, and we'd love to hear that. And while you're at it, scroll to the place on your podcast app where you can actually give us a rating and write us a review. That really means a lot to us. So thanks so much again for listening, and until next time, be well and stay in that growth space.